follow Miss Anna too, right? Okay. All right, we have Mr. Muhammad Taufik Afandi from Durham University, UK. Oh, I think it's still morning, right, in UK, Mr. Mr. Taufik. I hope the other participants can also mention in the chat box of the Zoom to write down your full name and also your institution so we can know each other's. The participants come from all around the world. Okay, we also have Mr. Sigit Hermawan from Universitas Muhammadiyah Sidoarjo, East Java, Are, Jawa Timur. Halo, Mr. Sigit Hermawan. You also has turned on your camera.
Halo.
Hi. Okay.
Assalamualaikum.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. How are you, Mr. Sigit from East Java? It's okay there?
Yes, it's right. From East Java, Jawa Timur.
Jawa Timur. All right. Thank you for coming in International Public Lecture today. Okay. Maybe the other participants who wants to greet things before we start this session. Okay. Okay, we have Mrs. Oh, all right, Mrs. Raden Roro, I think. Raden Roro Wuri Vivekananda from Universitas Jenderal Sudirman, Purwokerto.
Yes. Welcome in Jakarta.
In Jakarta.
Yes.
Oh, right now you're joining this event from Jakarta.
Yes.
All right, Mrs. Vivi. I hope you are in well condition.
Okay. Thank you very much for the invitation for the seminar today.
Yes, it's our pleasure to have you, Miss Vivi, in this prestigious event. Thank you so much for coming here.
Yes. Okay.
Okay, we are upcoming.
Thank you.
You're welcome, Miss Vivi. We are also waiting for other participants who want to mention. Okay, I think we have to begin formally right now. I hope you guys stand by and I'll start this session. Okay. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. His Excellency, the first keynote speaker, Professor Habib Ahmed, the Sarja Chair in Islamic Law and Finance at Durham University. Her Excellency, the second keynote speaker, Professor Amelia Fauzia, Professor of Islamic History and Culture at Sharif Hidayatullah State Islamic University, Jakarta. The Honorable Mrs. Rini Suprihartanti, Vice Chairman of Indonesian Zakat Forum. The Honorable Mr. Fahrizal Amir, as Headmaster of Indonesia Amil School, also distinguished guests and participants over the world. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen from all around the world. We are delighted to welcome you to the International Public Lecture, third session Amil Capacity Building Festival 2023. My name is Afidah Nur Aslamah from Center for Islamic Economics and Business, Universitas Indonesia, that will become your Master of Ceremony. Ladies and gentlemen, International Public Lecture, third session, Amil Capacity Building Festival 2023, organized by the Indonesian Amil School in collaboration with Indonesian Zakat Forum, and also sponsored by Dompet Duafa. This public lecture is part of the ICBF 2023 and expected to encourage closer collaboration between Zakat institutions, academics, and other related institutions towards a strong synergy in efforts to empower Mustahik's economy and increase the efficiency and transparency of Zakat management. This year's public lecture does raise the theme of governance and management for impactful Zakat operations during contemporary times. Before we begin this event, let's start Basmalah together. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Excellency Speaker, distinguished guests and participants, now we are going to listen to the welcoming remarks delivered by Mr. Fahrizal Amir as Headmaster of Indonesia Amil School. Please welcome Mr. Fahrizal Amir.
Thank you, Ms. Afida. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Ladies and gentlemen, dear Mrs. Rini Suprihartanti, as the Vice Chairman of Indonesian Zakat Forum, Prof. Habib Ahmed, as a speaker, first speaker of this international public lecture, Mrs. Citra Widuri as moderator, and Mrs. Amelia Fauzia. Okay. Thank you for all participants who have been willing to attend our first international public lecture from Sekolah Amil Indonesia. We are very happy to able to welcome all of you, ladies and gentlemen. I checked the list of the participants and found that there were participants from various countries, right? Such as UK, maybe. Is there any participants from UK? Saudi Arabia, Malaysia, Philippines, and of course our beloved country, right? Indonesia. And ladies and gentlemen, Indonesia has an extraordinary zakat potential, approximately 327 trillion rupiah, or approximately $22 billion based on research held by Basnas Indonesia. And as of 2022, it has only reached approximately 70 trillion rupiah, or around $5 billion, which means that there is still a lot of potential that can be optimized about zakat. And we have some challenge, of course, but one of the challenge, the optimization challenge of zakat management in Indonesia is the competency gap of Amil Zakat in Indonesia, which is why Sekolah Amil Indonesia is exists under the Indonesia Zakat Forum, which has approximately 194 member zakat institutions throughout Indonesia. We have mission to reduce the competency gap of Amil Zakat. We provide approximately over 100 trainings throughout the year. We support over 1,000 certification of Amil Zakat. We have online learning platform. You can click www.amilacademy.com, etc. Yeah. But to accelerate our mission, we initiated the event named Amil Capacity Building Festival, and this year Amil Capacity Building Festival, or ACBF, entered its third year. So we conducted more than 20. We conducted over 30 trainings in this 2 weeks, right? one of which was this event, International Public Lecture. We want to learn about cross-border zakat management worldwide, and also networking with zakat activists around the world. And I don't forget to say thank you to Dompet Duafa for supporting this agenda. Thank you, our friends from Dompet Duafa. And finally, let's enjoy the class, ladies and gentlemen, for the next 2 days. Today we will learn from two extraordinary speaker, right? Prof. Habib Ahmed and Prof. Amelia Fauzia. And tomorrow we will learn about zakat management model worldwide from Philippines, from Professor Sahraman from UK, from Malaysia, and so on and so on. Yeah, hopefully it will bring great impacts for all of you for zakat movement in Indonesia and the world. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you so much, Mr. Fahrizal Amir, for your warm welcoming remarks. Okay, we are now continuing our event to the next agenda, that is opening remarks delivered by the Vice Chairman of Indonesian Zakat Forum. Please welcome Mrs. Trini Suprihartanti.
Thank you, Ms. Afifah. So sorry that I'm still on the way in the car, so I hope I can deliver the speech early in this international public lecture. Honorable Professor Habib Ahmad, Professor of Middle Eastern and Islamic Political Economy and Finance in Durham University, and Professor Amelia Fauzia, PhD from UIN, and of course, my dear Fahrizal Amir as a headmaster of Sekolah Amil Indonesia, and also my colleagues Miss Citra Widuri, as a host of this international public lecture. On behalf of Forum Zakat, I'm very proud to express my highest appreciation to the Indonesian Amil School, Sekolah Amil Indonesia, for organizing this important event, the first international public lecture who had by Sekolah Amil Indonesia. So this event marks an important milestone in our journey to accelerate Amil's competency and, more importantly, increase the impact of zakat in our society. Ladies and gentlemen, we gather here today not only to share knowledge and experience, but to spark a sustainable movement. The theme writes, accelerating Amil competence to increase the impact of zakat, carries with a great ambition to create lasting change, changes that reverberate beyond these walls and extend into the lives of those who rely on the blessing of zakat. Of course, I would like to thank all stakeholders who have played an important role in making this event possible. To the speakers, not just for today, Professor Habib Ahmad, Professor Amelia Fauzia, and then Professor Sahraman, Haji Latif from Philippines, Imad El Fadin, and then also Mr. Zulfirdaus Abu Hassan from Selangor, and also Mr. Usman Malik from UK. We as a Forum Zakat, very thank you for being willing to share your knowledge and expertise with us. It is through your dedication, support, and collaborative spirit that we are honored to gather here today. So as already mentioned by Fahrizal Amir, that Forum Zakat is the association of zakat institution in Indonesia who want to enlighten and also share about how zakat management in Indonesia can be more better time by time, and can we deliver the sustainable movement in Indonesia and the growth of empowerment and zakat practitioners. And talking about vision, that's Forum Zakat, the extraordinary, we call that this is maybe as an extraordinary zakat movement that this organization often called as FOS or Forum Zakat has become a driving force for the progress of zakat ecosystem in Indonesia. We established since 1997, so since then and until now, we still committed to uniting zakat institution, fostering collaboration, and sharing best practice to increase the efficiency and impact of our efforts. So in this lecture, we want that we can share you with the others also, and we want share also from the others. So the zakat movement that we started is not just about collection of projects. This is a collective effort to uplift marginalized groups, alleviate poverty, and build a more just society. It's about cultivating a sense of social responsibility that goes beyond borders. In closing, I would like to reiterate my gratitude to Sekolah Amil Indonesia has pioneered this international lecture. This marks a stepping stone towards a future where zakat becomes a driving force, the positive change in our communities. With the support for the of stakeholders, it's like here in the International Public Lecture, we have collaborative with Dompet Duafa, the commitment of Forum Zakat, and the dedication of institution. I'm confident that our collective effort will propel us towards a sustainable, impactful zakat movement. Thank you and welcome to all of the participants, and let's enjoy the International Public Lecture by Sekolah Amil Indonesia. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you very much, Mrs. Rini Suprihartanti, as the Vice Chairman of Indonesian Zakat Forum, for your delightful opening remarks. Distinguished guests and participants, the next session is our main agenda, which is Stadium Generale International Public Lecture. For guiding this session, we have a remarkable moderator. She is Mrs. Chitra Widuri, an expertise with more than 17 years in Amil Zakat, and also assessor from INSP, Lembaga Keuangan Syariah. Now, she takes a position as Empowering and Distribution Program Director at Lasnas LMI, and also Head of Innovation Zakat Forum. Currently, she is pursuing her Master in Economics at International Islamic University of Indonesia. All right, I think Mrs. Chitra have joined with us in this Zoom meeting. Without any further ado, over to you, and please welcome our moderator, Mrs. Chitra Widuri.
Thank you very much, Ms. Nur, Afidah Nur, I'm sorry. This is a very special occasion. Before I presenting our special lecture today, is it my voice clear for you all?
Yes, Miss, it's clear enough.
Okay, thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. All of this distinguished guests, Amil Zakat, and also students and experts from international Islamic finance all over the world. Welcome to today's International Public Lecture. It is a very pleasure to have you all join us from different corners of the world. Today we are honored to have a distinguished speaker with us who is an expert in the Islamic finance and also Islamic microfinance and all about finance in a worldwide term that I cannot mention one-on-one. Professor Habib Ahmed. He is one of my lecturer also in the IIU. And now he is a Sharia chair in Islamic Law and Finance at Durham University Business School, and also a fellow honorary at the Cambridge Judge Business School, and director also for the National Zakat Fund Worldwide, UK. And prior to joining Durham University in 2008, he worked also at the some of National Commercial Bank and Islamic Development Bank Group, IRTI in Saudi Arabia. And also he has many classes all around the world. You name it, USA, Singapore, Bahrain, and yes, and also Indonesia. And the insight that can be bring from Professor Habib Ahmed can be huge contribution for us, and he had a very profound impact for how the zakat management can be done in many aspects. And before we get started, please a quick housekeeping for you all. Make sure that you keep your microphone on mute, so you will not disturb our session, and minimize the background noise. And we encourage you also to use the chat feature to ask questions during our session. And without further ado, hello, Professor Habib Ahmed.
Assalamu alaikum. How are you?
Alaikum salam. MashaAllah, we meet again, Professor. And I see that you are so with this bright ambience in UK right now, maybe still in the morning, Professor.
Yeah, it is in the morning. It's 8 o'clock in the morning.
And I can see you're very healthy today. Alhamdulillah, MashaAllah.
Alhamdulillah.
Okay, Professor, we are excited to hear your thoughts on this international public lecture about the zakat management on the contemporary today. And please, the digital floor is yours.
Yeah, let me just share my screen first. Can you see the screen?
Yes, Professor, it's clear.
Okay, thank you very much. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Let me just. First of all, I just want to thank the organizers for inviting me to give this talk. I also want to thank Chitra Viduri, who I met here in Durham during the summer school, and she asked me if I could give a talk. I just want to make one claim. I'm not an expert on zakah. I have done some research on zakah. Actually, when I was at Islamic Development Bank, one of the first research we did, which was based on experiences of 3 countries, was on zakah and waqf. And since then, I have done some research off and on zakah related issues. So given that caveat, let me just start the talk. I think I've given almost an hour. I'll try to speak for 40-45 minutes and leave some time for question and answers in the end. I'll start with the basics, looking at the scope of zakah and the prospects, and then go into some conceptual issues related to zakah, governance and management, focusing on collection and disbursement, and also in terms of managing, looking at efficiency, effectiveness and growth of zakah institutions. And then in the last part, which probably is the important part, we will be looking at Zakah Organization 2.0. Here we look at how we should try to understand the operations of Zakah organizations during contemporary times, so that it is efficient and effective and also can create impact. Now, we all know with the basics that Zakah has been an institution of creating social welfare and also a very important tool for poverty alleviation. we live in a world where there is immense wealth created, but with this wealth, we see a lot of inequalities and poverty. And this is in some ways a result of the current economic systems we live in, which itself generates these wealth and also the inequalities. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us this instrument of zakah in a way to mitigate this, this problem of income inequality and poverty. Now, if you look at the history of zakah, in the early days of Islam, zakah was a very useful tool to eradicate poverty. We have incidences from history where zakah could not be distributed because they could not find people who needed zakah. So in some ways, zakah can be a very important tool for income and wealth distribution, even during contemporary times. It is a unique faith-based institution. For Muslims, it is not a choice, but it is an obligatory, it's an obligation on most Muslims. It is the third pillar of Islam. So I think it has a lot of potential. And given that it is a religious obligation, we really have to, in some ways, implement this institution in our societies to create impact in terms of enhancing social welfare and also reducing poverty. The key issue, which I think was mentioned earlier in the opening remarks, is that even though there is a lot of potential, we see that it is an untapped resource. Even though a lot of countries face problems of poverty and income inequalities, the institution of zakah has not been used optimally. So I think zakah probably plays an important role at the micro level. It is not a macroeconomic tool which can be used. It is focused on individuals, both as payers and also as recipients. It is a specific program which targets the recipients, the beneficiaries, one by one. The other interesting thing about zakah is that it is a stable source of income. It is because zakah is levied on wealth, it is resistant to economic shocks. And actually, we saw that during COVID times, when during COVID, we had people who lost their jobs, and also then the income levels went down. But because zakah is on wealth, the zakah collection did not go down to that extent. So, and also we saw during COVID that it was the poorer sections of the people who were affected by the pandemic, and the richer sections were not that affected. So in some ways, because zakah is a tax on wealth, the rich could afford to pay those their zakah and transfer it to the poor who needed it. In terms of zakah disbursement, we can think of it in two broad categories. One is for productive purposes. So if the person who is receiving the poor is productive, young, and can work, it is better to use the zakah to increase their productive capacities, increase their what we call different types of capital, the human capital, the physical capital, and also it can be given as financial capital, so that can be used in some productive activity. And of course, then we have zakah for consumption purposes. This would be for the non-productive people who cannot work due to some reason. For example, the widows or people who are handicapped who would need income support. They can get zakah as an income transfer, which they can use for their livelihoods. And of course, I think another use which is relevant during contemporary times is to provide debt relief to people who are indebted. Now, in terms of zakah organizations, when we look globally, we can see different models. In some countries like Pakistan and Saudi Arabia, the government runs zakah operations. There are ministries of zakah which basically collect and try to distribute zakah. Then there are state-owned specialized organizations, and I think Basnas in Indonesia is an example of that. And within this category, we also see, like in Malaysia, the state-owned organizations come in form of corporations. And we'll see in the next slide how in different states the corporations are structured. And even though the corporation is owned by the state zakah organization, but the activities of zakah collection and sometimes distribution is done through corporate structure. And then the bulk of the zakah organizations are non-profit organizations or civil societies. And I think in most countries, we see that the non-profit organizations play a very important role in collecting and distributing zakah. And NZF in UK, for example, SENZF in South Africa are some of the examples. Now this, in some ways, is showing that when we look at the zakah collection and distribution model, it can be different. For example, in Pakistan and Saudi Arabia, the collection and distribution is done by the government itself. In Malaysia, the zakah activities are done at the state level. So Federal Territory Kuala Lumpur, their collection is done by a corporation. They have created a special corporation, PPZ, which collects zakah, and this zakah is then transferred to the government, responsible government entity, and the government then distributes the zakah. In Selangor, the collection and distribution is done by corporations. Of course, the corporation is owned by the state Islamic authority. And NPO, of course, just put South Africa and UK, but even in most Muslim countries, you have a lot of non-profit organizations which collect and distribute zakat. Now, in terms of zakah actual and potential, there was a study done by Professor Monzarkaf a long time back, and he actually looked at the conditions of zakah collection, and based on what can be added as assets in zakah, he estimated that the potential zakah which can be collected in different countries would be 1.8 to 4.3% of GDP. For Indonesia, I calculated last year GDP was 1.12 trillion US dollars. That would translate to close to 1.8% would be 23.7 trillion or billion dollars, sorry. And 4.3% of the GDP would be 56.7 billion US dollars. Now, he also estimated for some countries where information was available, the actual estimates. He found that in most countries, the actual collection was much lower than the potential. And he estimated that the collections were 0.1 to 0.3% of the GDP. Now, there is a study which was done for Indonesia recently. I think I got it from the web, and it is probably on websites of one of these zakah organizations. And they estimate that the potential zakah collection for Indonesia was 327 trillion US dollars, and the actual collection was 507 billion, which is actually less than 1% of the potential. Now, of course, I think one of the issues here would be that a lot of zakah is paid by individuals and to individuals, and this probably is not reported in this data. Now, the problem with the transfer of zakah from individual to individual, even though the a person paying zakah is fulfilling his religious duty. But I think one of the issues there would be that probably the impact of that zakah is not there, because if it is transferred to a person, the person will probably use it for consumption, and then next year would come back for zakah again. So I think to organize zakah by some organization is better, because you can collect zakah and then plan the disbursement in a way which can create impact in the society, and actually divert resources to areas where it is needed the most. So when we look at zakah, the problem during contemporary times, it is basically about increasing capacity and also the impact. It is, as we just saw, the potential is there. It's not only for Indonesia, but globally. But unfortunately, the collection, because the collection is smaller, the impact is also smaller. So if we want to increase the impact of zakah as an institution of social welfare and poverty alleviation, we have to not only increase the quantity of zakah collections, but also the quality of disbursement. It has to be disbursed in a way that that is effective in solving problems, and also in some ways producing an impact which enhances the social welfare. So there is a need to revive zakah institutions so that they can achieve the goals of enhancing social welfare. And I think we see that in some countries, including Indonesia, there are now a lot of efforts and discussions taking place in this regard, and a lot of things are happening in the field, which is a very encouraging sign. And actually this event itself is in some ways witness to the fact that people realize that zakah has the potential, and there is a need to enhance its impact in the society. Now, one of the key things which would require this change and increase the potentials of zakah in the economy and the society is the governance and management related issues. So this is the focus of this, I think, event and also my talk. So let's move on to the second part of the lecture, which is on governance and management. I'll try to go a bit quickly because I think time-wise, so that we can manage some questions in the end. So when we look at zakah organization, usually during contemporary times, we would have a board of trustees who would hire a manager for the zakah organization. The zakah organization basically tries to collect zakah from the payers, zakah payers, and distribute it to the beneficiaries. Of course, zakah organization itself would have some expenses. So the key issue here would be that the objective of zakah collection is to have impact in the society. And once you have the impact, then we in some ways can say that the zakah is performing its due role in the society. Now, one of the issues which is discussed in the literature of non-profit organizations is that there is a trade-off between the expenses and the disbursements. So if your expenses are too high, then you have very little money to disburse. So we have to consider that part when we're thinking of zakah organizations. In terms of the impact, we also need to ensure that the quality of the disbursement is done in a way that it can actually have some effect on the beneficiaries. It is not just giving the money and then forgetting what they're doing with the money, but to do follow-up, and also giving the money in a way or transferring the zakah funds in a way that it can enhance their productive capacities if they are productive people. And the other thing which is important is that if we are thinking of getting more zakah funds, then this impact itself is the story which can be told in terms of disclosure, and also the reports which suggest the impact of zakah, and that itself will encourage payers to increase the payments, zakah payments to the organizations. So the impact, it creates trust among donors, which can increase the further zakah payments. So in terms of governance and management, the Board of Trustees is responsible for the governance. It sets the strategic goals, which basically would translate into enhancing impact and to increase zakah collections. And the managers will manage this organization to achieve these strategic goals of increasing efficiency. Efficiency relates to number one here, which is a trade-off between expenses and disbursements. We want to keep the operations at low cost, as efficient as possible, so that more can be disbursed. The effectiveness relates to the impact on the beneficiaries, and the growth relates to number three, which is creating the trust which can enhance further zakah donations to the zakah organization. Now, in terms of the strategic and operational issues, we can think of the strategy, as I mentioned, should be enhance zakah welfare and impact. The key idea here is that to increase the impact, we need more zakah funds. And so the more the zakah collection, the more the impact, and the more the impact, the more the zakah payers will be willing to pay to the specific organizations, the more the zakah collection. So there is a cycle here in terms of impact and zakah collection. And I think it is very important to note that when we talk about zakah organizations, we're dealing with two types of clients. I'm using the word clients in a way to basically identify the groups which a zakah organization should be focused on. Sometimes we focus too much on the recipients, but we forget the zakah payers, because to have an impact on the zakah, on the beneficiaries, we actually have to increase the flow of zakah. So zakah players and zakah recipients both are key players, I think, in a zakah organization. And actually, in some ways, if you're looking at from a Sharia perspective, it is the zakah payers who are fulfilling a religious obligation, right? So zakah payer in that sense also becomes a very important, what should I say, stakeholder in zakah operations. Other thing related to operations is that because the Amil, the managers zakah organization, is one of the 8 recipients of zakah. So that means that the revenue of whatever zakah is collected, 1/8 or 12.5% of it can be used for, zakah operations, which can be spent on administration, which includes marketing, collection, disbursement, impact assessment. All these activities have to be covered by 12.5% of the, at most, the 12.5% of the zakah collection. Now, this is where the efficiency comes in. That means you have to be efficient to do all the activities which fulfills the strategic objectives of enhancing social welfare and impact by doing all the things, managing, as I mentioned, marketing, collection, disbursement, impact assessment, and others activities within this income of the zakah organization. The key operational issue for zakah organization is how best to spend the revenue to increase the growth in zakah collections and enhance impact. And here we have these 3 concepts of efficiency, effectiveness, and growth. Very quickly, when it comes to zakah collection, I think the key thing would be to do the marketing of zakah, and this would mainly mean to increase the zakah literacy. A lot of people they want to know how to calculate their zakah, for example. They are not aware that zakah is an obligation on Muslims and have to be paid every year. So there is a need to raise awareness on the obligation of zakah through various outlets. They're creating facilities to collect zakah Nowadays, it's easy to do it online. So if a person wants to pay zakah to any organization, they can do it online. In the past, it used to be you had to go to a bank or a post office, for example. In Malaysia, you have an option, for example, to deduct zakah from your salary. I don't think it is the case in most countries. And the other thing, which is not related to zakah organization itself, but it relates to the overall jurisprudence, Sharia jurisprudence on what are zakatable assets during contemporary times. Nowadays, we have a lot of new types of assets, which includes, for example, stocks and sukuk, and more recently, crypto assets, which are zakatable. And I think there are international bodies which have made rulings on what are zakatable assets, and I think this needs to be in some ways propagated in different countries, so that people who own these assets, they can pay the zakah, which will of course increase the zakah collections. And as I mentioned earlier, transparency and disclosure is very important, because ultimately zakah is a trust-based concept. If people trust that the zakah payments will be used properly, they will be willing to pay zakah to the organizations which can create this trust. And to create the trust is basically an information problem. There has to be continuous reports, which in some way shows how much funds have been collected, how much has been distributed, and what has been the impact on the people who have received zakah. In terms of zakah disbursement, I think I've covered it already. To empower people by increasing the productive capacities, income transfer for the unproductive, for example, elderly people who cannot work, the handicapped, among others. And also more recently, I think we have learned, again, this is from COVID, that we also will be able to use zakah for protection against risks. In fact, whenever a negative shock happens in the economy, it is the poor who are affected the most. They are the most vulnerable. And I think zakah can also be thought of an instrument to mitigate the risks. And one way to mitigate this risk among the poor is to increase their wealth levels, not only income levels, but also wealth levels. Studies show that people who have more wealth, they can sustain negative shocks in some ways better than people who have less wealth. So in terms of the operational issues of zakah disbursement, as I have mentioned a few times, the quantity of zakah has to be increased, and also the quality of the zakah has to be made better. And by quality, we want to see that zakah is used in a way that either increases the productive capacity or meets the needs of the poor who actually need it. Now, one of the key issues, as we will see in the next part of the lecture, one of the key issues, especially when it comes to disbursement, is the information on the beneficiaries. So when we're talking about the quality of disbursement, we want to make sure that the zakah is received by people who actually deserve it. And for that, we need to have the right information of the deserving benefits. And I think that's where we can go to the last part of the lecture, which is basically a zakah organization 2.0. The basic principle of this zakah organization 2.0, again, this is basically, and in some ways, this zakah organization 2.0 is taken from my observations in terms of what is happening in reality and the potentials which or the zakah organization, the techniques, the technologies which they can use to further improve their operations. So in some ways, this is more a suggestive section, and I think people who are working in the field, they probably have better experience than me. But again, I think there is a need to, in some ways, fill this gap between the potential zakah and the actual zakah collection. And I think we have to think of newer ways of thinking how that can be done. Now, to start with, we have to understand that there are two sets of clients. There are donors who are the zakat payers and the beneficiaries who receive the zakat. And collection and disbursement in different kind of approaches and skills. Actually, there are very different type of skill sets which are needed and approaches to target the donors and also how to, in some ways, distribute zakat among the beneficiaries. The success and growth of a zakat organization depends on the trust, which in turn depends on efficiency, effectiveness, and creating impact. And on the right side, you have this circle, I say, virtuous circle of zakat collections and trust. So when you have trust, you will increase the zakat payments. And with efficiency, effectiveness, and impact, you can basically further increase the trust, which will further lead to higher zakat payments. And the other thing, of course, is any contemporary zakat organization must be technology driven. You have to use technology to benefit from its from it. And as we will see, I think technology can play a very important role when it comes to zakat operations. Now, I'm going to talk about this zakat organization 2.0 in terms of disbursement and collection. So starting with collection, what I'm suggesting is zakat collection requires a special organizational incentives and skills. I'm taking this from the Malaysian experience of creating corporations. The corporation is, even though it's a corporate structure, it is owned by the zakat organization. But the good thing of corporation is it is given a mandate because the corporation itself is governed by a board of trustees who are people from the zakat organization. But the corporate structure has an interesting thing that that it has managers and it has its objectives, and the managers would run the organization efficiently to basically achieve those objectives. So in a corporate structure, the revenue maximization with 12% collection as fees of the company. Now the company will basically, I have put the 12.5% here. Actually, it can be less than, for example, it can be 8%. So a manager of a corporation, he knows that if he can increase zakat collection, his revenue will increase because the revenues are basically dependent on zakat collection. So if it is 10% of zakat collections as revenue of that corporation, a corporation can increase the revenue by increasing the zakat. So the corporation will do everything it has to do to increase the zakat collections. So there is incentives to raise zakat collections because the company wants to increase its revenue, and the way to increase its revenue is to increase zakat collection. So it will do the marketing, it will do the literacy, it will have all the collection points so that it's easier for zakat payers to pay the zakat, among others. And the other thing is very important when you think of a corporate structure. One of the things is that you will try to hire good managers, just like in a company, you try to hire the best managers. I think because it's a corporation, you will try to hire good managers and also pay them well, because I think sometimes we forget that incentives are very important. So this corporate structure provides the incentives for the company to raise zakat collections, and people working in that company will also should have the incentives and have good managers who can run this corporate structure. Now, I can give you one example from UK, NZF, when it was created some 12 years ago. They actually hired a person who used to work in an investment bank. That person was motivated to do something good, working in an investment bank. He came and he established, he basically managed the National Zakat Foundation UK for almost 10 years. For the last 2-3 years, we have a new manager, a CEO of NZF UK. He has a PhD from Oxford University, so you can understand that he's definitely capable not only in terms of management, but also the Sharia knowledge which he has. I think his PhD is in Islamic studies. So the point I'm trying to make is these are very important things. If you want to think of the future, we really need to have good people who are working in these organizations. Now, coming to disbursement, disbursement is a problem not only for Zakah organizations, but for any social protection systems. And we have cited here two papers, recent papers. One is a World Bank paper, which is the one on the left, source book on the foundation of social protection delivery systems. And the second one is a paper which was published last year by COMSEC, based in Turkey. And it's also about social assistance provisions. And both of these papers actually, or research, they were published after the COVID, because it was, they found that it was during the COVID time, it was very difficult to distribute, the government assistance to people. So one of the key things which both these reports identify is what I have quoted here from the second report, from the CONSAC report. So it says the ability of a government to care for its people and respond to their life cycle needs depends on its ability to identify those who are in need, enroll them, provide tailored benefits and services, and follow up to cater to evolving circumstances. And the key thing here is to do this, these actions require dynamic and real-time data. So data and information is the key for any social protection system, which of course includes Zakah disbursement system. So this is taken from both of the reports. They use this framework. So when we're talking about a social protection delivery system, we have these different phases and then steps within these phases, which needs to be taken. The first is to assess the beneficiary. So you have to go out and see who are the beneficiaries who need the assistance. Then you intake and registration, assessment of needs and conditions. So this is the assessment part. Then you have to enroll them in the system, eligibility and enrollment decisions, determination of benefits and service. Different people will have different needs, so you have to understand what kind of package that person needs. And then notification and onboarding, so that's the enrollment part. And then, of course, you deliver the services, provide the benefits and or the services. And after delivery, you have to manage in terms of beneficiaries' compliance, updating, and grievances. If you're looking at a delivery system, you also have to measure the impact. And finally, if the program is successful, that person will not need the services anymore. And then there are issues related to exit decisions, notifications, and case outcomes. Here, you're going to look at the impact of the whole program. Now, of course, here the key issue in terms of the information is when you're assessing the beneficiaries, you need to have the information. And again, when you're following up in terms of whether the beneficiaries have come out of the problems or if there has been any positive impact on the beneficiaries, we need to have this information. And this requires dynamic and real-time data. So this is, I think, a very important problem, that we need information and data in terms of identifying the beneficiaries, and then also seeing how the intervention, in our case, it would be the Zakah payments have impacted their lives. So the key challenge in social assistance programs, including Zakah, is expanding the outreach to new beneficiaries and dynamically updating the information on existing beneficiaries, one of the most challenging tasks of protection systems. And this is, as I said, recognized by these international organizations. The main issue is gathering and updating information on beneficiaries. Doing this centrally would be costly and time-consuming and static. Actually, there are some governments which have started to collect data And again, the COMSEC report, it mentions both Indonesia and Turkey. In Indonesia, you have this DTKS, which has enrolled 25.7 million households, which is 40% of the population. And in Turkey, the assistance integrated social assistance system has a higher number of people enrolled, which is 57.7 million individuals, which is 70% of the population. But the problem with this state level data is it's not dynamic. They have collected the data, and then after maybe 2-3 years, they'll collect a new set of data. So it is a very expensive procedure. And the key thing is that it is not updated on a regular basis. So what I suggest in this lecture is to basically develop integrated Zakah information systems. And to use that, I'm also talking about what we call use the social capital we have in a very important institution of Islam, which is the masjid. Now, social capital is a concept which has been discussed in literature for a long time now. Basically, what we mean by social capital is networks of social relationships that can provide individuals and groups with access to resources and supports. One of the key thing is basically it is a community-based support which people get when they are in need. And one of the important things is because it's community-based, information can be transferred very easily within the community at almost zero cost or very low cost. Now, I think mosques can be looked at as religious community-based institutions, which has a lot of the social capital. And I think I'm sure that a lot of Zakah organizations operate through masajids. But I think with the masjid, we can integrate this technology to come up with a solution to identifying the beneficiaries for Zakah. So just to give a brief overview in terms of the masjids as community-based social capital. In the past, actually, the masjid played a very important role in any Muslim society. They were not only places of worship, but also places of social and community activities. There are a lot of masajid, they had the schools and libraries, and still they have schools, I think madrasas in a lot of masajid. Important life milestones are linked to mosques, for example, birth, doing akikah, for example, marriage and death related issues are linked to masjid. Social gatherings and festivals, and even some masajid, they have clinics and pharmacies, for example, for helping the poor. So this is an important source of social capital which can be used in Zakah operations, and mainly to solve the problem of information exchange at lowest cost, and also identifying the people who need the Zakah in the communities. So the information challenges, as we have discussed, is the key challenge. And what we can look at is use mosque, social capital, and technology to resolve the information problem of identifying the beneficiaries and measuring the impact. And this is what is in some way suggested, that when it comes to disbursement, the Zakah organization will be linked to mosques. And of course, when we say mosque, we're talking about the imam and muezzins, for example, who are there in the mosque anyway to lead the prayers. So they can be given this additional role of actually also identifying people who need Zakah in their community. In some ways, that will be an optimal use of the time, because right now they're just dealing with one pillar of Islam, which is prayers. We can also add the role of identifying the deserving people, which is the another pillar of Islam. So, and these mosques and Zakah organization will be linked through this integrated Zakah information systems app. So the idea is that we will have the imam or muezzins, they will have an app on their smartphones or tablets. If they don't have smartphones, this can be provided by the Zakah organization. So they collect information on prospective beneficiaries and inputs it in the ISIS app or on smartphone or a tablet. The data information is transmitted. Once it's inputted in the app, it goes to the ISIS database. The Zakah organization will have access to database, use algorithm to assess the eligibility of the applicant. So the algorithm itself can see whether an applicant is eligible or not. And then the Zakah organization can make a decision in terms of whether that Zakah applicant is deserving the payments. The Imam Muazzin can also periodically update the beneficiary's condition on the app. And the other thing would be that if this is all done through this information system, the system itself can produce the reports very easily on a regular basis. How much applications they received, how many people were given, what kind of all the background of the beneficiaries will be on the system. You can come up with very good reports, updated reports, both on the distribution and also on the impact. So looking at the things in a stepwise way, I'm coming towards the end of the lecture. Hopefully we can finish in 5 minutes. So when it comes to assessing the beneficiaries, mosque can play an important role. As I mentioned, Imam or Muazzins can collect information. And actually, they have to be paid fees. Again, this is an incentive thing. For each person they enroll, you can pay them a very small fee. Of course, that will not only be an additional income for them, but also an additional thing which they can do other than just leading the prayers. And of course, teaching the students, which most imams and muezzins do. So register and input data on the ISIS app, data transmitted through the integrated Zakah information system. In terms of enrollment, this decision has to be made by the Zakah organization. But again, the ISIS app will help them to make this decision, because once the information is provided, the system itself will in some ways give them an initial idea of whether the person is eligible or not. And then a Zakah officer can then make a decision whether to identify the recipient as a beneficiary and basically enroll them for the Zakah disbursement. The Zakah distribution itself can take through digital payment systems. So even you don't have to go physically and transfer the cash. It is done through digitally. And then in terms of manage, we can again said this relates to again going back and seeing what is the impact. Again, this information can be gathered by the Imam and Muazzins in a mosque and inputted in the system again. And the key thing is that you can have updated data on a regular basis using the social capital of mosque, which is basically a community-based organization. And finally, the Zakah organization can decide, depending on this report, which or the impact assessment by the masjid, then Zakah organization can decide whether to exit that beneficiary. The beneficiary maybe has graduated, does not need the money anymore. So next year he will not be given the Zakah. And the key thing here would be, from a management point of view, that there has to be some audits done, to basically see that the system is working properly. And I think this in some ways summarizes that the key issues in terms of what is needed. First, of course, there would be a need to train the imams and muezzins of mosques for how to input the data, what kind of data, and also when they're inputting the data, to ensure that the data which is being inputted is correct. And because most of the people using the mosque, they are from the community, I think the imam of a masjid probably would be the best person to know the reality of of a person in terms of the data which is being inputted in the system. Decision to enroll is made by the Zakah organization. And as I said, the ISIS algorithm can be an important instrument in terms of identifying who is eligible and who's not. The funds are provided digitally, and the Imam Muazzins follow up on the beneficiaries to update the information. And the Zakah organizations carries out periodic audits that the information provided and the system is working properly. So this is my last slide. So this is in some ways the framework of Zakah Organization 2.0. We have on the collection side, the payers, the Zakah Corporation deals with the collection and is basically responsible for issues related to Zakah literacy, marketing, payment systems, and disclosure reports. And then on this side, we have Zakah distributor, which is basically going to distribute the Zakah through mosques in terms of the mosques helping in identification and impact assessment. And then the Zakah distributor basically disbursing the Zakah to the beneficiaries directly through digital payments. The key issues here would be efficiency. As we said, the maximum revenue which a Zakah organization can keep is 12.2%, 12.5%. And all these operations have to be done within this revenue. There has to be effectiveness in terms of impact. I think when we're looking at the quality of disbursement, the use of mosque and community capital of the mosque and the community, it will help identifying the right capital, and the technology, the ISIS app will in some ways help in terms of the collection of information, also disbursement. And in terms of the growth, as I said, one of the key factors is to have annual reports on collections and disbursement and the impact. And I think, again, this ISIS app will be able to create these reports very efficiently and on very regularly. Of course, one of the key investments which will be required for this to work is to invest in this integrated Zakah information system. I think it is difficult for one Zakah organization to do it. As I heard, there are more than 100 Zakah organizations in Indonesia. I think this is something which can be done collectively. One Zakah app which can be used by all. So this is, I think, something which can be thought of in terms of developing this app which can be used by different Zakah organizations. I think I've come to the end of the lecture, and I hope I have some time for questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor Habib. MashaAllah, it's a very detailed explanation about how we can increase, how we can enhance our impact in terms of zakat disbursement and zakat management. And the explanation of zakat management that has an impact, Professor Habib also giving us an example that involving mosques means we are not separating between zakat and salat, right? And
Yes,
placing the and placing the masjid as a center for the improvement of the people. This is a very enlightening, Professor. Thank you very much. And also you are mentioning how we can involve the digital system. We can put the criteria for zakat recipient, mustahik, in a kind of algorithmic system that can be accessed by the operators and also recipients, and maybe we can set up to control and evaluate it also. And this means that zakat operation can be used to increase also the financial and also the digital literacy among us. I think this is a very good explanation, Professor. Thank you very much. And also we already have some question from this is the organizer already distribute a form and we have received some question. Maybe I can read some of them. Sorry. First question from, this is from Turkey, Sakarya University. Miss Nur Amalia Aziza, are you available? Okay, Miss Amalia Aziza asking about, sorry, Professor, this is, in your point of view, will fintech integration-driven institutional zakat more transparent and impact, especially for SDGs? Yeah, this is her question.
So fintech again, the fintech-driven?
Sorry, will fintech integration-driven institutional zakat more transparent and will giving impact to SDGs also?
Yeah, definitely. I think what I suggest in terms of including technology is basically social fintech, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there are already fintechs which are collecting sadaqah and zakah. Actually, they are there, but I think the idea here is to use technology to, in some ways, enhance the governance and management of zakah operations by zakah institutions itself. Yes, it is a fintech solution. Fintech, in a sense, is social finance, and tech part, of course, is the this system which I'm talking about. Now, in terms of SDGs, not all SDGs can be helped by zakah. For example, no poverty, zero hunger. These are definitely SDGs which directly relate to zakat. And there are some SDGs which relate to employment, and that can also be in some ways dealt with zakah payments. But when you're talking about infrastructure and other things, of course, these are not areas where zakah. That's why I said it's not a macro policy; it is more a micro policy. So there are some SDGs which definitely can be, targeted through zakah. And of course, the obvious ones would be zero poverty and no hunger.
Okay, so Professor, if I might elaborate more on SDGs.
Yeah.
As far we know that SDGs will be reaching their goals, their timeline on 2030, means like less than 7 years ahead.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any insight whether it's still significant for us? As we know that the SDGs all over the world not yet achieved. None of the country achieving any goals from 17 goals. Is it still relevant for us to give a thought about SDGs in our zakat management?
Yeah, I mean, see, SDGs, if you look at goals, to start with, they were very ambitious goals. And one of the things when they were launched in 2015 was they are ambitious and they would require huge resources. And they identified, I think during that time, it was $2.5 trillion, which will be the resource gap, the financing gap to achieve the SDGs. Now, now this number has increased after COVID to $4 trillion annually. Now, if you cannot invest this amount, by definition, you cannot achieve the SDGs. But having said that, SDGs itself, there's nothing wrong to still have these targets. You cannot achieve 100%, at least if you can achieve 50%, that's also good enough for some countries. But unfortunately, what is happening is in some countries, even this 50% is not being achieved. And after especially COVID, and now with inflation and other things, I think in many countries, they basically, it will be very difficult to achieve these SDGs, but that doesn't mean that we have to abandon them. At least we have some targets, and some of these are definitely if you look at it, no poverty, zero hunger, these are very then the issues about sustainability I think these are very important things for us, as humanity, actually, when it comes to issues related to climate change and other things. So yes, these are very ambitious targets, but at least if you can achieve some of it, that's better than achieving nothing. Right?
Yes, thank you, Professor. And if I might continue, there also a question from Brawijaya University, Miss Dinda Putri Permatasari. She's asking about the government regulation. What is the good government regulation that can affect it to the awareness for Muzaki to give zakat?
Yeah, actually, I had a slide, one slide on regulations, which I took out from my presentation because I thought the presentation has become too long anyway, and because it's more about management and governance, not directly related. But yes, I think government can actually play a very important role. In most countries, you have regulations related to non-profit organizations, because we have to ensure that these non-profits, because they get tax benefits and they are saying that they're benefiting the society in some ways. So they have to ensure that these organizations are not misused. And I think the same applies to Zakah organizations. We need to have a framework, legal regulatory framework. And I think Bank Indonesia with Basnas and also Islamic Development Bank, they have come up with some guidelines on, they call it core principles on Zakah regulations, I think. And in that document, they basically identify what are the regulatory issues which should be looked at. And one of the key things, of course, is that, there are issues related to governance, there are issues related to, in management, it's related to transparency. And I think definitely, if Zakah organizations are not doing these themselves, the regulations will, in some ways, require them to do certain things which I have discussed, especially related to, the disclosure and information of their operations.
Professor, I really do apologize about this, but the zakat core principle itself is derived from the, I don't know, like a Basel principle for bankers. And the regulation itself is more for us as the operators. And I mean, to increase the awareness among Muzaki, I think it's a very still long run for us because I met many people in UK that coming from banking industries, insurance industry, they're fluently talking about zakat, but not in Indonesia. I mean, in Indonesia, people who talk about zakat only ask the Amil, not bankers, not the investment managers, not the rich people who talk about zakat. And how do you think about this? Is there any regulation?
Yeah, I think this is the literacy part which I mentioned. There are two things, I think, from an economics point of view, which every Muslim should, maybe three things. One is zakat. Zakat is the third pillar of Islam, and we don't know. We know how to pray. Most of us are taught how to pray, but we don't know our obligations of zakah, how to calculate zakah every year. For people, I think that should be a very integral part of teachings of, as a third pillar. We just talk about paying zakah, but as you rightly mentioned, if you ask any person how to calculate zakah, very few will know how to calculate this zakah and that every year it has to be paid and things like that. So that has to be definitely a part of Islamic literacy, not only zakah literacy, Islamic literacy. The second point I mentioned is, among the prohibitions, riba is the most strictest prohibition. But again, you'll see a lot of Muslims, they're very comfortable with dealing with riba and interest and things like that. So that is also another layer of, I think, Islamic literacy, which is needed. And third, which is a bit more complicated, not everybody should know it. I think it's the inheritance laws. I think that is also very important. Should be a part of Islamic literacy for every common Muslim. I think these are the three key economic, I think, elements, which I think it's not easy, but especially the inheritance law is very complicated. But at least the first two, I think these should be known by all Muslims, that they should not deal with interest and how to calculate and pay your zakah.
Okay, thank you, Professor. May I add last question? This is from Anggono Wahyu Prasetyo. I think he is an Amil from Yakasma, Sulawesi Utara. He has a case, I quote here, when we implement an economic empowerment program for prosperous families, the program duration is 2 or 3 years. In the first year, the impact of the program was not visible because the main problem is in the mindset. So we focus more on trying to change the mindset first. However, on the other hand, it is often that we've seen that the impact of this program on economic growth has not felt. Please advise us on how we can respond to this so that the donors' view remain positive on Zakat institution. Thank you.
Yeah, I think here actually we have to, in some ways, try to understand. I mean, these are the knowledge and skills which we need, right? And I think there is a gap in terms of managing zakah organizations. You need specific management skills. Then to assess the impact, you need specific knowledge and skills for that. Again, as I said, I'm not an expert. I have done some research, but if you look at in the West, you can actually get degrees in non-profit management, right? Actually, you can, in some universities, you can get a master's in non-profit management, but which means that there are a certain knowledge and skill sets which are required for non-profits. And for when we talk about zakah and waqf organizations, we need a separate skill sets, not only in terms of management, but also their Sharia requirements. Now, in terms of impact, I think we have to understand that the impact will be micro level because we are targeting individuals. So when you're assessing the impact, you probably have to understand whether the individuals, their lives have been changed or not. I don't think zakah should be thought in terms of macro impact, in terms of economic growth and those things, because as I said, it is not a tool for macro related policies. If a certain percentage of your recipients have improved their lives, through the zakah intervention, that itself is a success. So I think the impact has to be basically focused on the individual who receives, the household, whether the conditions have, and I think this is not done in most zakah organizations, but to basically understand and learn from the experience of zakah operations, I think the impact story needs to be included in the thing. And again, I understand one of the problem is, if you do it in the traditional way, it is very difficult and costly to do the impact assessment. But if you're trying to use technology and use the social capital in masajid, use the imam, it is relatively, I think, easier and also cost effective to assess this impact.
Professor, you mentioned that there are three purposes on zakat disbursement. For empowered people, for income transfer to the unproductive, and also the protection against risk. What if this kind of precondition among the zakat recipient on their mindset, on their history, on their background is a kind of situation that are making them prone to the risk? Is it okay for us to put this kind of condition as part of our risk management? I don't know. What do you think about it?
I think it's very difficult for me to answer that question because, as I said, I think, these are the three key areas. Now, we have to remember that sometimes we fail to understand that risk is a very important part of most people's life, right? And it is becoming more and more important as we have come in a world which is very complex now, a lot of uncertainties. So we really have to, and this also relates to in microfinance, the focus is to increase the income, but they do not deal with the risk part. So a household can increase his income and then there's some negative shock, maybe a flood or something, and then the income drops. So I think there has to be some thought at least to also increase this idea that we have to think of how to build resilience among the poor against shocks. And one way to do that, I think from a zakah and waqf perspective, is to build the wealth of people. If you have built the wealth, and actually zakah is transfer or is a payment on the wealth, then when we are transferring it, we're not thinking of the wealth of the poor, we're just transferring it sometimes for consumption and nothing happens to the wealth. I think, again, this is my own thought that maybe we can think of transferring wealth itself. So wealth goes from the rich to the poor. And actually, if you look at some of the zakah conditions, like zakah on livestock is a wealth, right? Camels, and during the Prophet's time, it was camels. And so you're not paying money, you're actually giving camels itself as zakah, right? So you're transferring the wealth. I think maybe these are some of the things which we need to think of, how to build this resilience. And one way to do it is to come up with programs which can build their wealth. And for the productive people, if they can increase the productive capacities, for example, one of the way you can increase your productive capacity is to build different types of wealth, which can be your human capital. You can think of the physical capital, which adds to their wealth, and that probably itself is a solution to deal with the risks.
Okay. Professor, we still have a few minutes. Is it okay that I will ask one of the participant here? I'm sorry, maybe he sent a private message here. Brother Muslim Ansari, are you here? Can you open cam and open mic? Maybe you can ask directly to Professor Habib.
Yes, can you hear me clearly?
Yes.
Yes, I can.
Yes. Professor Habib, this is related to my research, actually. I'm a student in
Sorry,
University
brother, can you introduce yourself, please?
Okay. My name is Muhammad Muslim Ansari. I'm currently a student in University of Dundee. But back in Indonesia, I work for Ministry of Finance under the Directorate General of Taxes. So actually, I'm a tax officer. So many studies recommend that my question is, many studies that I read that recommend that the government combines zakat and tax. One of the suggestion is to treat zakat as a tax credit instead of a deductible income, just what happened in Indonesia right now. This change could benefit Muzaki and taxpayer actually, because it reduces their double burden in financial burden. However, it might also decrease the state's revenue from the government point of view, because the zakat will reduce the number of tax revenue for the government. How can we propose this research or this suggestion to the government effectively? So how can we urge the government to do zakat as a tax credit instead of a deductible income? Because it happens in Malaysia, they succeed to do that. But I don't know, in Indonesia, it's quite challenging for me. Even as a tax officer, I don't think this is an easy plan or easy way to approach our leader to do so. Thank you.
Thank you,
I
brother.
think it's an important question. I think in Malaysia, the logic was that because in Malaysia you have a significant non-Muslim population, so the non-Muslims, then they're not paying zakah. So if the Muslims are paying zakah, they are in some ways paying the taxes and also paying the zakah. So it's and more burden relative to the non-Muslims. So now, as you rightly mentioned, that there, if you pay zakah, that is in some ways deducted from the taxes. You don't have to pay it is a part of the tax. Now, I don't think that's an issue from a government point of view, because most governments have social policies, right? Social welfare policies. So this is being used from the government budget anyway. So if you are collecting zakat, the government is collecting zakah and using it for social welfare policies, which qualifies for zakah payments, then it is basically, in some ways, getting additional revenue of zakah, which basically can be used or focused on those government social policies. So I don't think it will reduce the tax, the total tax. The only a part of the tax will come as zakah, and the role of the government is to ensure that this zakah money is used for purposes which qualifies for zakah, distribution. Does it answer your question?
Yes, Professor.
I don't think it will reduce the thing. It is just how you're going to use that money for already existing programs which the government is spending money anyway, right?
Yes, I got your point. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you, Brother Muslim, for the question. It is a very interesting topic, Professor. I suppose it is the thesis topic for Brother Muslim. In a way, we're helping him. And I guess we have still few questions, but I'm sorry, the time is already reaching 3:30 in Indonesia for now, and we should have this Asar prayer. And okay, yeah, in some area in Indonesia already Asar. Professor, would you mind to give us a closing statement maybe about these topics to highlight our discussion today?
No, I again want to thank you for giving me this opportunity to come and speak about zakah. I hope the discussion was fruitful, and I'm really happy to say that, especially in Indonesia, Alhamdulillah, there's been a lot of things done at the ground level, and I think we can probably learn a lot from your experience there. And these kind of events help us to, in some ways, exchange ideas and further develop this very important institution, which is a very, what should I say, important institution, which has a lot of potential, but is not being used to the potential. So I wish you success in the remaining of this event. And again, thank you very much for having me to speak on this topic, very important topic.
Thank you. It's an honor, Professor, for us also. Okay, everyone, we are going to have a closing here. You open your cam and we can do a short cam together with Professor Habib Ahmad. Okay, the organizer, please help to have a screenshot. Okay, I will count to 1, 2, 3, maybe. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Okay, one more. 1, 2, 3. Okay, thank you everyone for your participation. Thank you, Professor Habib Ahmad, for this great enlightening session. I hope we can meet you again, whether in Indonesia or in other place, and keep on healthy, Professor. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam.
All right, thank you so much, Ms. Chitra Widuri, as our moderator, distinguished guests and participants. The next agenda is break Asar prayer in Indonesian time. We'll come back in 15 minutes around 3:50 p.m. So please stay tuned and come back with us to join this Zoom after we take an Asar prayer. Thank you. All right, ladies and gentlemen, pay attention, please. We will continue our agenda. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Distinguished guests and participants, welcome back to our International Public Lecture. We are now continuing our event by continuing the lecture from our second keynote speaker, the Honorable Professor Amelia Fauzia. And she now has been joined with us in this meeting. For guiding this session, we still have Mrs. Chitra Widuri as our moderator. Hello, Ms. Chitra. Over to you to guiding this session.
Thank you very much, Afida. It is a very energizing session before us. And after this, we will have more hot session. The previous session is more giving us warm because we learn about how we can increase our impact in zakat management. And after this, we will having Professor Amelia Fauzia, PhD. She is one of my favorite teacher, my inspiration, and also my muse, because she's giving us, especially Amil Zakat in Indonesia, a very complete setup about the philanthropy ecosystem, about the governance in Amil Zakat and everything. And sorry, I think I have a noise before me. I will close the door first. Okay. Yeah, sorry for the noise. Okay, my fellow friends Amil Zakat from all around the world, and ladies and gentlemen, I would like to pronounce my my distinguished guru, Professor Amelia Fauzia, MA, PhD. She is one of the professor in Islamic history and culture from UN. How can I mention it? Universitas Islam Negeri Jakarta. So it is Islam, a state university, Islamic State University in Jakarta, and she is also the head of Institute for Research and Community Empowerment, also in the Islamic State University of Jakarta. We usually mention it as LPPM. And Professor Amelia also holds a director position for Social Trust Fund in Jakarta, which is one of the zakat management in the university. And also she is one of the visiting senior fellow for School of Humanities and Social Science in Canberra, UNSW. And Professor Amelia Fauzia is also one of the founding mother, of Zakat movement in Indonesia. And she has many publications around his Islamic history and also Zakat. And without further ado, Professor Amelia Fauzia, we will giving us a session about regulation and the governance of zakat management, and how can we perceive this regulation and governance to improve our impact. Professor Amelia Fauzia, please, the digital ground is yours.
Okay. Thank you so much, Ibu Chitra Widuri. We just met yesterday, right?
Yeah, we met yesterday and also today.
It's great to have you as the moderator now. And thank you for the very generous statement on me. It's too good for me. But yeah, I thank you so much, and thank you also for the invitation to share my ideas and talking in this international public lecture. Is it? If I'm not wrong. By the way, as Ibu Chitra mentioned that I always wanted to help to make the zakat practice in Indonesia becoming more and more progressive. So many times I couldn't say no to the invitation from FOS. So because FOS is very crucial, it's a part of important civil society that I feel obliged to help. So I would like to share my PowerPoint. I'm sorry I don't have much time in preparing this. Yeah. For a second. Oh, sorry. Maybe. Maybe I stopped. I think I should. Share. Yeah. Okay. Zakat governance and regulation in Indonesia. Dear respected speakers, honorable speakers, and respected participant of this international public lecture. Also friends from Sekolah Amil Zakat, FOS, and many student professor attending this public lecture. Here I would like to talk about zakat governance regulation in Indonesia as asked by the committee, but I didn't notice actually the point of the impact that Ibu Widuri mentioned. Yeah, so I will later on maybe mention a little bit about that point. My presentation is. I'm afraid some of you have already know and listened and read my paper, so you may know about a little bit about this. Okay. Basically, I will talk about the diversity of zakat management before going into the Indonesian case, the history of zakat management in Indonesia, and then I think the regulation has been influenced by the relationship between state and civil society. So I will refer to my own thesis about that, and then I will give a case studies, let's say, on the what I said, the contestation between state civil society into cases. The first one is on the case of the very recent case, namely the 108 list of the name of the zakat institution mentioned by the Ministry of Religious Affairs. And the second case is related to the management of Islamic charitable institution in higher education or universities. So in the end, I will see how is the zakat management regulation and the impact into the transformation of the post-reform zakat management. As usual, I will refer my talk usually to some of my books and my recent research. There are two recent research that I use. The first one is the Toward Action about how Muslim philanthropy organization in Indonesia, co-opting with the idea of social justice and development, let's say. And
Professor,
yes.
Professor, I'm sorry. Would you slideshow this presentation maybe so that the participant can have
Okay.
a full screen?
Oh, full screen. Oh, sorry. Okay.
Maybe you can put the slideshow. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Thank you, Professor.
Yeah, and the second one is that I didn't mention here. I don't mention here. Actually, my book. Where is it? My comment and research. It is almost becoming a book on the phenomena of philanthropy in phenomena of Islamic philanthropy in higher education and universities. This is my research last year with my colleague. Okay. Now, yeah, as I mentioned before, going on quite detail on how Indonesia regulate zakat. I'm sure all of you have known and aware about this, about the diversity of zakat management in the world, let's say. But looking at the state and civil society relation. So we know there are some government that regulate zakat, collect zakat, and distribute zakat. It's only by the government. So it's full government. So for example, like in Saudi Arabia, etc., that zakat matters is related with the state. And then it's become obligation. It's they put it into the regulation, right? Regulation. And the second style, let's say, or types, where zakat could be organized, collected, and distributed, both by the state and civil society. This happened in some countries, including in Indonesia. As we know here, we can pay our zakat to state zakat body, Basnas, and we can also pay our zakat to non-state zakat institution. Yeah. So both state and civil society. There are regulation about that. And the last type, where zakat has been managed by fully civil society organization, where the state do not interfere, do not organize directly the zakat, let's say, payment, collection, and distribution. But of course, the state support the facilitate, let's say, facilitate how a Muslim could do their religion, including payment zakat. So, so many countries have this kind of zakat management. Of course, there is no state formal regulation on zakat, but the state provide freedom of Muslim. That's why there are so many Muslim organizations organize zakat. We know, for example, the Islamic charities, Muslim Aid, so many from UK, and many others from the Germany, etc. From now becoming more popular from United States also. I'm saying that, sorry, if you see the three different types and looking toward which organization becoming like worldwide acknowledged as a zakat organization, for example, Islamic charities, where does this organization come from? Is it from the state where zakat has been fully on the authority of the state, or from the, like Indonesia, where zakat has been could be managed or regulated, organized by the state or civil society, or from the, let's say, secular countries? Well, yes, this the most famous big transnational zakat organization mostly comes from secular countries. So I recall the very respected scholars, Muhammad Abdullahi Ahmed, Abdullahi Ahmed An-Naim mentioned that in his book, of course, he said that now the Islam has been developed well in the secular state. So this is as a background, where later on we will focus on the how zakat being managed within the context of Indonesia. So you can see in the right section, so zakat has been can be play. Sorry, if it is too loud. Okay. So you know, is that in many parts of the world, including Indonesia, zakat has been practiced by individual. I mean, like not giving to the Amil organization. So some individual just pay the zakat directly. It's still everywhere in the world. And then there are also institutions like state-based and then non-state organization of zakat. I forgot to mention one more institution, which is the Association of Zakat organization. I think this is very crucial. One of my student, very good student, who is also president of one of the Zakat organization, now writing about the Zakat Forum as one of the crucial civil society organization, especially because it is Association of Zakat. Okay. Shortly, sorry, I will try to revive or remind you about the history of zakat management in Indonesia. Well, during the Islamic Kingdom, I think I mentioned this in many places, including, of course, in my book, Faith and the State. During the Islamic Kingdom, there is no one, let's say, one single practice of how zakat being managed. Certain kingdoms regulated zakat and make it very strong regulation, like in Aceh. But in other kingdom, they don't make special regulation on zakat, but it is given to the ulama or local leaders to collect, to be given to Amil local amil, etc. So there are variety. Again, some make it as voluntarily, let's say, payment going to the civil society, and another one is becoming a state issue, regulated by the state and sometimes enforced. Well, I'm sorry, there is no strong documentation during this period. Only some, let's say, manuscript and records, let's say. That's why I am suggesting any of you, especially historian, to dig more to study about this period, which is very interesting. And if any of you can do research on this, it will give us more insight on what happened during the past period of Indonesia, because some scholars like oh, I forgot the name, mentioned that actually zakat has been used as a tool for the Islamization during the Hindu-Buddhist period. So some people easily could convert becoming Muslim because they've seen zakat. So please support the study of past history of Islam, especially zakat in Indonesia. And during the period of colonial government, well, some people see the government has been very bad in trying to limit Muslim practice of anything. But some scholars say that there are some clue that the government, colonial government, has been also contributed to the better administration of zakat and to avoid the malfunction abuse of zakat. For example, Snowkur Gronya try his best to limit the government official to take the zakat money. Yeah, actually, the official said, "Well, I am Amil, let's say Amil, so I can have a portion for for me." But according to Snowkur Gronya government, no. If you are official, no, you are not allowed to take it. This is a kind of trying to make regulation to avoid abuse. Of course, there is a kind of some people will disagree with this, but at the time, the government has been very harsh, very strict in dealing with politics. So as long as the zakat or wakaf related to politics, then it has become very difficult to develop. But as long as the zakat, wakaf, sedekah has been used for Muslim to support social activities, then the government support this, colonial government at the time. It proved at the early 20th century in 1901, let's say 1901, with the ethics of politics. At that time, the colonial government provide very open, like inclusive regulation, support Muhammadiyah, Nahdlatul Ulama, and etc. in the effort of Muslim to collect money, to establish organization, to establish school, etc. Using the zakat, wakaf, and sedekah. And during that period, also the government has been implementing certain regulation that actually, according to Dutch government, specifically according to Sekolah Amil, because he learned fiqh, so he followed the strict regulation of fiqh. And he said something like this: well, actually, at the time, there are so many mosque cars or mosque money, let's say, mosque fund has been grow well among mosques, including zakat, and then they use the money for any creative purposes, including for the lamps in the street, for example, and many others. Of course, some are quite abusive. For example, for the colonial staff, for the loan, yeah. And the Dutch said that no, zakat should be for the poor. The colonial government should not make use of it, and the land in the street should not use the zakat money or sedekah money. That's very strict because Sekolah follow very strict fiqh. But according to some ulama at the time, well, what's the problem? This is for the community. The street lamp is for the community, and zakat is for the community. So this is a very interesting situation at the time. Again, we need more people to do some research on that period. Anyway, after 1900, 1901, the government quite supportive in Muslim organization. That's why zakat has been implemented well. But again, with some notes that the government didn't want at the time. They don't want to have a regulation, specific regulation on that, because this is, they said zakat is belong to Muslim. They should be regulated by themselves. It is civil society. That's the situation at the time. Moving into old order lama, and also new order baru. New order, we don't have much information at the time, but during that time, people try to use any funds, zakat, infak, sedekah, including wakaf, to support our new country. So I think if we can claim that how Muslims support our new country is during that time. So there are many, including offices, government offices, which use the facility of wakaf at the time. But unfortunately, there are not many information at the time, but no specific regulation like the law, yeah. But only from the starting of new order, the government starting to involve in the management of zakat. So they think that, well, we could use the money for the benefit of the development, let's say, from the Suharto. But of course, the Muslim at that time quite refused that idea, because there is no good clue from the government at the time. They are afraid that the government will only make use of it and do not really want to support Muslim. Yeah, but after the reform period, the situation changed because of the political reform. Muslim civil society becoming more powerful, and the impact is there has been a movement of zakat, sedekah, wakaf, then where sometimes many times are called it philanthropy. So there has been a contribution of civil society in the zakat practice and movement. And then the reform, the reformasi, democracy brings a strong zakat movement. I would say this, democracy brings a strong zakat movement. Of course, there has been contestation, but contestation refers to balance power. It is still okay in the past, in the experience of Indonesia, contestation is still okay. As we see now, civil society remain in the power. So this kind of contestation, this kind of practice has been in practice until today. So if you see, for example, the year from 2000 to 2018, you can combine. Before 2000, quite limited number of organization, but after reformation, let's say, the transformation is very, very fast. This is what I called in my paper, that because of the Islamization, modernization, and social justice. So there are three aspects that make the Muslim philanthropization: the effort of Islamization, the way adopting modernization, and then the idea of social justice, which is very strong idea in Indonesia, as we know, Pancasila, keadilan sosial bagi seluruh Indonesia. So this is what make our practice of zakat today like now. If you recall, before reformasi, none of us think of we send zakat abroad, no? But after reform, the 100, I think, I don't know, I feel like now becoming 500 laws, yeah, non-state zakat organization. And then mostly we know that our zakat organization many times send money outside Indonesia, send assistance outside Indonesia, such as to Palestine, to Yemen, to Turkey, etc. So this has been very changed within 20 years of the development of, let's say, philanthropy in Indonesia. So political reformation strengthens civil society, of course, including philanthropy sector. Again, I will remind you about the CAF, Charity Aid Foundation, mentioned in its survey that Indonesia is the most generous country in the world. We are in the top one of the list, about 130 countries in 2018, 2021, and 2022. According to some research, and I also read the research of the Philanthropy Indonesia, it shows that actually, compared to the family foundation, compared to let's say non faith-based organization, so Islamic charities organization contribute a lot in strengthening the philanthropy sector in Indonesia. So this is the research says. So we need to be proud that there is a potential on how zakat contribute to the country. But then we need to find out, to see closely. This is my thesis that many times I refer to and mention. It's already mentioned in the book, but I think I like to mention it again because it's related to the regulation. Relation between state and society, and how zakat has been regulated and how zakat has been practiced right now, it has been influenced by the dynamics on the socio-political and economic condition within the country. And the dynamics will result in the regulation. For example, the dynamics of political reform, reformasi, in 1998, 2000, etc. The result what? The result is the regulation of zakat law, the regulation of zakat, namely the zakat law. And then we have Baznas, etc. We have also Wakaf law, right? Wakaf law. It is because of political reform. So I'm saying that it has been very dynamic. The regulation is the result of the dynamics of state and civil society. So the question is, state, how zakat should be managed or organized and regulated. It is the state should collect it or should manage it, or civil society. So we can go back to the first slide that I have. That in some countries they have different type of management of zakat, of how zakat has been regulated and managed. So my thesis saw that there has been, if the civil society is strong, philanthropy is strong, during the reform period. The reform period, yeah, so after reformation, reformasi, the practice of philanthropy, including especially zakat, has been very, very strong. So during the weak of the state, when the state is weak, philanthropy becoming strong. But when the state is strong, philanthropy practice become weak. This is, we find it during the Suharto period. So I'm saying that strong state make philanthropy weak. And then weak state, such as in not only in Indonesia, in America, for example, weak state makes philanthropy strong. That's in the history of Indonesia. But then, of course, we don't want weak state. Neither we don't want weak civil society, weak philanthropy. No, we want strong state and strong civil society, strong philanthropy. How could it be happen? Is it possible? And the answer, yes, it is possible. And we had the experience during the colonial period. During the colonial period, we had a strong state and also strong civil society. How this happened? Because state at the time facilitate civil society organization, Muslim, to regulate, to manage zakat, infaq, sedekah by themselves. So from community to community. The state didn't involve in the collection, but involved in supporting and facilitating. Yeah, and then that's why make philanthropy at that time becoming rising well. So I don't know. I'm historian. I used to follow the. I used to see the past, but it seems to me, if the state, the government, wanted philanthropy to flourish, to develop well more, the government should limit the regulation which undermine civil society, undermine zakat collection by the civil society. And then, in fact, like in the UK, in many countries that have big transnational Islamic or zakat organization, the state there give the authority of zakat into the civil society, in the hand of the state. So of course, in Indonesia, we have different type of people here compared to the West, but there is always a balance on how to make the idealism, the idea of zakat becoming strong and civil society strong, and the state also strong. Okay, now looking at what today, what is it? Okay. Looking at the today's situation about the zakat regulation or philanthropy regulation, I would say that there is a poor philanthropy regulation. Of course, the state has been busy with so many difficulties, but the regulation on zakat, especially on philanthropy, has been separated. Okay, this is the, for example, zakat should be regulated by the Ministry of Religion or by Basnas. But zakat organization also do fundraising, right? Do fundraising and do sedekah and donation, collect sedekah and donation also, and do humanitarian activities too. They also should follow actually the regulation from Ministry of Social Affairs. But then there is no integrated governance related to zakat and philanthropy, especially Islamic philanthropy in Indonesia. So the regulation somehow do not really support civil society organization because some regulation has been issued. For example, PUB law has been issued in 61. So this is one problem. And another problem is the zakat management law, UUPZ, yeah, the recent UUPZ has led to a number of regulations that limit in civil society organization. So the zakat law there is being interpreted, yeah, especially with the state body, to make the state body more get power, let's say, but it is in effect to diminish the power of the civil society. To me, this is very crucial to, we need to fix it, because civil society should be crucial, and zakat is important to be to get more authority or power in zakat organization. I mean, to get authority or power in the development of the organization, etc. So if there are so many organizations to limit, and then we can see in other countries it becoming lowering the capacity of the organization, lowering the capacity of civil society. I'm going to the two case studies. One is, it's very, but Chitra has been very happy to see this. No, I'm just kidding. This is a small case studies that how the Ministry of Religion make a release of list of 108 charitable or zakat organization which has been, they said, has no registration. They don't have any registration from the Ministry of Religion. Okay, but you know the impact of this? Well, before going straight into the impact, I know Mas Fahrizal Amir and many other friends know better than me the impact, but especially the release, the list has been 3 points. It has some mistake in the some data, right? It's mistake. A few number of organizations that unregulated, but actually they've been regulated. So there's a mistake. But this is dangerous mistake, of course. And the second, there is no confirmation. In or not tabayun in the in the religious language, whether a confirmation or let's say in the more professional word is like no investigation, let's say, or at least question the organization before making the rules. And the third one is the undermining the role non-state entities, undermining non-state entities. This is the government. We are the state. We have the authority. Well, of course, but the state couldn't do anything by itself. Not only in Indonesia, anywhere in the world, state need society. Of course, society also need a state. The society should also follow the rules, but there is a space where state and society could discuss the rule, the regulation. So I'm saying that the list of 108 unlicensed zakat institution, somewhat the list aim. I can see the good purpose according to the ministry that this list aim to make better organization of the non-state zakat institution for better governance. Okay, yes, this is a good aim, right? But the way it released, the way the process and how it has been released, it could damage public trust in the world of philanthropy in Indonesia. I just like heard from my colleague from England, from where, oh, Amelia, what happened, etc. So, and this finding, this way, I'm afraid, is counterproductive to the effort to increase public trust in zakat institution. And the last, I think the release somewhat my thinking, my thought is contrary to the government's effort itself in government program to explore the potential of national zakat. I can mention some ministries: Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Ministry of National Development, Bappenas, Ministry of Social Affairs. Many other ministries, they try to, engage, support the zakat organization, as this is very crucial to support the national development of Indonesia. So this is contrary. I mean, the way the Ministry of Religious Affairs make the list, the issuance of the list is a little bit in hurry or not really thoughtful for the impact. The second case I would like to mention is the case of Islamic philanthropy institution in higher education. This is not only because of I am the director of Social Trust Fund, but I did a research last year on this, that I'm about to release a book of fenomena zakat, fenomena filantropi Islam di perguruan tinggi. After the political reform, Indonesia political reform, there are more and more higher education perguruan tinggi open, let's say zakat or sedekah or charitable unit in the university. But unfortunately, the effort of these universities, either Islamic universities, state universities, has gathered some challenge in terms of the regulation, in terms of legal entities, how charitable institution or zakat body could be established within university. University said, well, zakat body or zakat organization has been very crucial in support university, especially wakaf. But because of certain regulation, the undang-undang pendidikan, for example, in many others, it is quite difficult for zakat institution, philanthropy institution to develop well within university. To some extent, the government, the Ministry of Religion, ask or make try to bring zakat institution within university to be unit only, unit under the state zakat body, under the Basnas. Maybe it works for certain universities, but in the long run, it actually diminishes the potential of zakat, Islamic charity, Islamic philanthropy to be used to support higher education. We know, for example, the Al-Azhar University from the Fatimid period, 900 from the 900th year. It used wakaf, sadaqah. And then it survived to date, the university. And many other madrasah from the 8th century. It has been supported by sedekah, wakaf, and zakat too. But now in Indonesia, how could the Islamic philanthropy can be used to support the university? It is quite difficult. So because of the regulation, and also it needs more support from the Ministry of Religious Affairs, I think, to deal with this issue. And the impact is because of that, especially for the Islamic university, state Islamic university like UI in Jakarta, many Islamic charitable unit, Islamic charitable institution has been growth well in the, let's say, non-religious, non-Islamic university compared to the Islamic university. Don't blame us in Islamic university because it's quite difficult in dealing with the regulation. So we need to reform the regulation. And the last point I would like to mention is the transformation of the post-reform zakat management. I mean, transformation after the post new order. Now, the best is most charitable institution, zakat institution has been used the modern management, which is great. has a program diversification, yeah, which is great too. In transforming, and some of the big organization has been thinking of transforming the short-term to development and long-term more sustainable approach, including using SDGs. This is great, but we forget is actually how this could happen because of the use of ijtihad in fiqh of zakat, reinterpretation and adaptation in the contemporary world. I just read the book from Nur Khalis Majid. It says the story of how state King Faisal to the ulama at a time in his period. King Faisal said that, okay, we allow radio, yeah, during his time. We allow radio to give more information to the people. Well, Saudi Arabia allow radio, but then what ulama said at the time? What radio? The radio is like a black thing. This is it gives sound, benda yang keluar suara dari situ, and they said, well, if it has sound, it must be Satan over there, so we should abandon radio. Jadi ulama waktu itu melarang radio karena katanya radio itu keluar suara, dan biasanya suara itu keluar dari sesuatu yang punya ruh. Nah, kalau radio itu punya ruh, itu ruhnya siapa? Jadi itu ruhnya setan. Jadi dilaranglah radio ketika itu. Tapi oleh King Faisal so clever. So, the next time dia memutar Al-Quran, ayat Al-Quran dan seterusnya, and then the ulama changed his mind. So this is a very small example how we need ijtihad in anything. The contemporary period, of course, we will face so many challenges, especially artificial intelligence, etc. And then if we want to survive, not only survive, we want to excel in the future civilization, we need doing more ijtihad, combining the maqasid sharia, let's say, with the transformation of the way in dealing with the fiqh. Yeah. So this is the last thing that I want to say. I'm sure that there will be Q&A, Bu Chitra. I will stop here. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Professor. Yes, we should have a question and answer for this session. You already bring a bunch of issue, Professor, and it's a very interesting issue. You're mentioning about the connection between zakat and a strong state, that if we have a strong zakat management, means we have a strong civil society, means we have a strong state. Is it correct, Professor? So in a way, we can say that we can put that if the zakat management resulting a strong ecosystem between us, resulting a strong ecosystem among philanthropies in Indonesia, we have contributed to strengthen our country also. And this is a very insightful, I guess. And also, yes, I have a deep contemplation when you're showing us about the 108 unlicensed zakat institution that been released by the Minister of Religious Affairs. Well, one interesting point, Professor, I'm sorry, I do apologize for you, all the participants, but I have to come up with this information. Lately, like a week ago, we had this meeting with the new director on Zakat Wakaf affair from the Mora. And one of the leader among them asking Forum Zakat about the progress on this 108 institution, whether this 108 institution already having solved their permit on zakat collection, and we're just having this awkward situation because the responsibility should be upon the Minister of Religious Affairs, not upon us. I mean, Forum Zakat didn't release anything on this situation. So yes, kind of a funny story in Indonesia, I guess. We should be ashamed of this, but but I think we can learn something from that. Sorry, Professor. Okay. Our fellows, Amil Zakat from all around the world, and also the honor student and participants, we have question and answer session for now. Maybe we can have like 10 to 15 minutes. I'm asking you to just raise hand or open mic, or maybe I can read when they do the registration, Professor, some of the students already submitted question actually, and maybe I can pick one of the. Okay, this is one interesting question from Muhammad Said or Sri Sukatmo. Are you here? Maybe you can show us and open your cam. From Lasnas Dewan Dakwah. Okay, is he or she here? Okay, I will read the question. This is a quote, Professor. I'm directly reading the question. In the regulation, permits are required for establishment of new zakat institution. Will this permit space be open continuously? Then for an old, I mean the existing organization or foundation, large and new institutions or small, there is no difference. Or are all equal in the process? Is this condition really wide open without restriction? What is your opinion on this, Professor? Maybe he's questioning about whether the permission room is open for any organization for no without restriction.
Well, the regulation actually should be first should be inclusive to all of the type of organization. But I know I'm afraid that my reading is well, I don't know whether correct or incorrect, but I think certain policy more toward the big organization compared to the small one. This is my view. This is my view. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe the Forum Zakat know best about this answer. But actually, for example, during the colonial period, during especially or the new order, yeah, you know, it's regulation is for everyone, for any organization. Yeah, but then of course, because in Indonesia we have so many organizations, it's quite complex. Then maybe the state make a kind of clustering, let's say, clustering the big one, middle one, or small one, and then to me, it is okay too, as long as in a way to make improve the capacity of the smaller organization. Yeah, not to diminish it, not to remove it. So, you have small organization, why don't you combine into one organization? Well, that's not civilized. That's not civil society. In many history of civil society, where the country has been strengthened from the civil society, from the people, is they really listen to the people. They make not only listen but menghormati, respect organization, including, I know my colleague in the UK, they also think that, for example, oh, your organization is the same like this organization, why don't you combine? But it is not simple. No. Yeah. And last time, sometimes it happened, it succeed, and some no. And even the government, even the state-based organization, yeah, not all of them also, let's say, modern, have a professional management. No. So I think there should be justice, balance. We need to support, to strengthen, to make a better capacity of any organization, whether state or non-state, in Indonesian context, because there are some, let's say, Basnas in Kabupaten, let's say, which do not, which has not been organized well too. So justice, yeah, the process of dealing everything in a justice way, in a just way, in a fairness, I think this is one of the key to make our society becoming excellent. Sorry, it's too philosophical, the answer.
Yeah, Professor, maybe because I wanted to highlight your point about it should be based on justice, it should be based on balance, it should be something that develop or improve the capacity of the civil society without giving a discrimination between small and big organization. But is it how should be the regulation form then? I mean, in the recent law, maybe like in the Zakat law of 2011, number 23, the regulation more on giving permit. It has like a screening procedures. So in your opinion, is it more better if the regulation is more likely to only register the zakat institution, not screening them, like so we can facilitate them as registered, not licensed but registered. Only
Yeah,
like
I think in other countries also, the first step is registration, register.
Yeah,
Register should be made as easy as possible, but then there will be consequence after the registration.
Yeah,
I think the way the government make yayasan, yeah,
foundation, yeah,
yayasan, right, the foundation, the law on foundation and the regulation for it, it's quite simple, easy to make foundation, right? But then there is a consequence that we have to follow this. We have to report this and that. If we are not following it, we're not giving the report, and then we couldn't continue our foundation. We need to report again. So there is a very easy mechanism, I think, with the registration. I think you know our problem today. We don't have. If somebody asks me from England, from States, Amelia, how many zakat organization in Indonesia? Anyone can ask? I can answer this. Even the Ministry of Religious Affairs, it's quite difficult. Okay, they said, okay, the registered one is this, the licensed one is certain, and then unlicensed. This is, well, it's silly to me.
Yeah.
In the United States, I know there is also regulation about this, and it's quite simple. It makes, because of the simple doesn't mean bad,
Yeah.
Simple doesn't mean it's too easy, and make it chaos later on. No, of course, after registration, let's say registration, and the organization should comply with this. If not complying, okay, so there will be like stages, okay, and then we can have the number, we can have the data on how big is Islamic charity organization in Indonesia or zakat organization. Nowadays it's quite difficult to mention, and it is, how can we engage with this organization to develop more our country, to develop community, our ummah, if we don't know the strict
We don't recognize, because the state didn't recognize this kind of organization.
Yeah, because of the state doesn't give easy regulation, then the state also couldn't do anything, right? So I think we need to put the other way around. I don't know. I'm not lawyer. I'm not a specialist in law, but to me, I can see many other countries, regulation in other countries, which make the Muslim philanthropy becoming, blossoming there. It is because of the rational way of regulating the organization, the zakat organization.
Okay, Professor, now we can move to another question that also related with this discussion, I guess, about, this is from, maybe this is one of your students, from UIN Syarif Hidayatullah, Jakarta, Rista Nindya Sari. Sorry, are you here? Rista Nindya Sari. Maybe you can raise your hand or open the cam. If it is not, then I can read the question. The question is quite simple, but maybe not simpler. What is the relation between the government, the financial institution, and the community organization in the regulation and governance of zakat?
Sorry, could you repeat again?
Yeah, the question is, Professor, what is the relation between the government and financial institutions and also the community organization in the context of regulation and governance of zakat?
Okay. Okay. Government, financial institution, and community organization in the context of governance of zakat. Well, actually, all of this, let's say, party or stakeholder should try to make a better governance in zakat. Tata kelola yang baik. Good governance. Good governance couldn't only stop or created by the government, no. And also by community organization, no. Financial institutions, so they all should, and also one more actually, business institution. Business institution. So they all need to engage to make a regulation law or a betterment of the regulation of zakat. Like this, the zakat law is not only the result of government, right? Not only result of the civil society organization. No, there was also the rule of let's say senator,
the legislator.
Legislative too. And then legislative also try to announce it to the public and make a hearing, etc. There is also the rule of public there. Yeah? So when our public, when our community said the zakat should be ruled like this, and then it's the legislative thing, oh, okay, this is the good way. And then, yeah, it happened like this, right? Of course, there is always ways to convince the state or the government. The government think the best way to deal with the zakat is like this, but civil society said the best way is like that, and the legislative differently, and the public differently. So I think we need professional academics and also pegiat ya, activists of zakat should deal with this to make the movement of zakat to a betterment of our country. So zakat in the it is not only, I mean, I'm referring to the program of zakat. Program of zakat should also deal with the empowering community, not only dealing with the food poverty, but also the the brain and advocacy. So in this way, this is what happened in England. So they have a charity commission. Everybody, it is a kind of state-based, but it has been very respected. And then if any of let's say charity organization abuse, and we will just release abuse, and then so it is not the government will deal with this. So but this charity commission is a result of the long way of process
Like 300 years.
yeah. I believe what we have in Indonesia is also a process. It's also a process. So don't worry about what happened now, but I believe with the new director in the Ministry of Religious Affairs, very professor, very well educated, we can explain. I'm sure the future of the, let's say, the opinion, the voices from below, which is very important. as
Grassroots opinion.
yeah, and it could be heard more. Yeah. So this is well, the relations should be like um, um, to work together, to communicate together, engage, collaborate. I think that's the best way to deal with the regulation. Yeah.
Thank you, Professor. We have someone in the chat room, Sinantia Sriono Putri, who want to ask question. Are you here? Can you open your cam and maybe open your mic also? You can ask directly to Professor Amelia.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity. I have a question, Prof, regarding the information you have been said about there are several or perhaps hundreds of illegal zakat institutions. Is there possibility
Sinantia,
that
can you introduce
yes?
yourself first? Sorry.
Sorry?
Can you introduce yourself first?
Okay, sorry.
And if it is possible, you can open your cam also.
Okay. I'm apologize before I cannot open my cam now because okay, let me introduce myself. My name is Sinantia. I am the student from University of Erlangga. I want to ask about your information about there is several or hundreds of the illegal zakat institution here in Indonesia. Is there will be our the vulnerability or possibility that this illegal zakat institution is being used by the terrorist financing? Perhaps you can more elaborate about it. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Sinantia. Well, Professor, this is a interesting question.
Thank you, Sinantia. Well, actually, when I raised the issue of 108 institution, what I'm doing is I'm doing a criticism to the government why they put this list, because there are some mistakes in the list, the status, etc. That's the first point. The second point is well, actually, about the, let's say, organization that has been there's possibility of let's say terrorist financing. I'm afraid it doesn't mention there. Yeah, but of course I did a small research for IK Hub BNPT because there are many also clue that some organization, including zakat organization, has been made by organization which are related to terrorist organization. Yeah. So terrorist organization, let's say ISIS or Jamaah Islamiyah, they make zakat organization. And there are many other zakat organization which actually do not really aware of sending money. So this is a point of literacy, I think. Not really intendedly to give money for the terrorism. So I think the list doesn't aim to, let's say, to target the terrorist related organization. You know, Sinantia, one of the organization is my organization. Yeah, but you need to read more report from the Forum Zakat, etc. They have very good report explaining there's 108 release. I'm saying that the release should be not released. I mean, shouldn't be issued by the government. If the government really want to do capacity building, there are many different ways of doing it. No, but not by issuing a release like that. Some also with data yang salah, ya. The government, Ministry of Religion could do effort like the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Ministry of Social, Ministry of Bappenas, National Development, and other ministries which are quite, let's say, quite supportive in dealing with the Zakat organization. Yeah, this is actually a kind of criticism for me.
Yeah, thank you, Professor. And may I add something on that?
Yes, please add. You know very detailed about this percentage.
Yeah.
Also, you have some percentage number, etc.
Yes, Professor and all of the participants, and also our sister Sinantia. Yes, you should read more on the news about this 108 said as the unlicensed Zakat institution, that we have already held a research among these 108 organizations. And yes, as Professor Amelia said, that one of them is the Social Trust Fund of UIN Syarif Hidayatullah. So you can imagine how Professor Amelia highlighting that this release is such an incorrect information, and to recklessly pouring a hit on the ecosystem of zakat, and so unproductive for our development in zakat. It will be like counterproductive measure from the Minister of Religious Affairs. I might say this now, and it is okay. And because our research said that among these 108, among them are organizations that already proceeding their license. I mean, their name are already, their name, their profile, and all of the report already given to the Basnas and Minister of Religious Affairs. So it's already in process, but they said it is unlicensed. And also some of them also have been licensed. I mean, like they already have the license, but it being said they don't have it. And also some of the other are still ongoing, like you know, the qualification or the requirement to have this license. You have already operated, you have the asset, you should report the activity and everything. It cannot be just like you set up a foundation and then you ask for a license. No, you cannot do that. At least you should operate 1 year to have the license. You know, it's because we should be supply the report. But in order to operate in a year, you should have the license. So it's just like a mix-up regulation. So the 108 release of the release of 108 unlicensed, said as unlicensed zakat institution for our minister is such I don't know, it is a very immature approach from our state. So they should be engaged more with us, and maybe, I don't know, Professor, maybe we should change the title on our regulation, not zakat management, maybe like mainstreaming zakat, or maybe progressive zakat, progressive zakat implementation, something like that. Not, it cannot be just management or regulation. Maybe, Professor, maybe. So yeah, Indonesian people tend to giving definition on, I mean, on the terminology and wording. So maybe we should change the title so that we can approach this in a more wisdom way, more wisely, more inclusive, and more, I don't know, maybe more engaged with the civil society. Maybe, Professor, this is maybe you can have like closing statement also, Professor, regarding all of this discussion.
Well, I always think that in the position that state and civil society should collaborate, should work together. I'm saying this not, I mean, in the want to you know, eliminate or want to disgrace. No, I mean, state has a very important role, but state couldn't do by itself for the regulation. And I'm very happy that friends like Dr. Chitra Widuri and any others has been put quite a great effort to collaborate with the state, you know, to do literacy with the state, with the government. This is never end, never end process, never end program or activities. Yeah. So in a way to have better regulation, we need to speak up. We need to do advocacy, and in doing the advocacy, we need to make what do you call it? Kesetaraan. So
equality.
Equality. So this is what I think is good point from many other example in many other countries, that the government respect civil society organization, also the organization respect the government. So this is the very good way in their way, or that we can make a regulation, better regulation that has been agreed by all of us. Of course, this is not ideal one. Of course, there always be disagreement. Of course, disagreement. But then disagreement doesn't mean that we fight, ya. Kita harus menjelekkan, merendahkan. No. I don't agree with some of the government regulation, for example, but it doesn't need, bukan berarti saya harus ngomong kata-kata kasar merendahkan, tidak. Both government and civil society have very good idealism, aim to make betterment of the zakat. So with this in mind, our effort, even though we have a different path, we have different opinion, we disagree, we still in the good way, making the future of zakat is better. This is what I hope. I really hope the Forum Zakat become one of the contender to do the zakat movement, especially in the dealing with the advocacy of zakat regulation.
MashaAllah. Forum Zakat will be needing you all more after this, ma'am. And yes, we are the big house of the Zakat movement, so everybody can join us, inshallah. And yes, we are highlighting many of your quotes here, and we totally agree that this is a never-ending journey, never-ending learning, long life education for us to learn more and creating the better zakat implementation in the future, inshallah. Thank you very much, Professor Amelia Fauzia. Jazakillahu khairan kasir, and all of the participants for the last session. May you open your camera and we can do the photo shooting session. Okay. Oh no, still like 36 here. Never mind. This is the last contender, maybe, ma'am.
That's okay.
Last contender before my grip. Okay. MashaAllah. The organizer committee, are you ready to make a shoot? Okay, I will count 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Once more. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Thank you very much, everyone. We're having such an enlightenment session. I do apologize for any inconvenience, and I bring back the session to our MC, Ms. Afida. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Makasih. Thanks so much.
Makasih Bu Amel, 2 hari berturut-turut sama Bu Amel ini betul-betul.
Good moderator, the host.
Thank you. All right. Thank you so much, Ms. Chitra Widuri, for guiding the session very well. And also thank you so much, Professor Amelia Fauzia, for your enlightening presentation and also discussion. Excellencies, distinguished guest participants, ladies and gentlemen, we have had productive and inspiring time together, and this first day of the International Public Lecture about to come to the end. I hope you found the presentations on this event are informative and helpful. We'll continue the lecture by International Zakat Management class tomorrow, inshallah, with excellent speakers. There are Associate Professor Sahraman from Philippines, Mr. Imad El Fadili from Netherlands, Mr. Zulfirdaus Al Hassan from Malaysia, and also Mr. Usman Malik from United Kingdom, inshallah. So tomorrow class will start on 2 p.m. Indonesian time by Zoom meeting, inshallah. Now we will close the first day of this public lecture by reciting Hamdalah together. Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin. On behalf of Indonesia Amil School, we would like to say thank you very much for making time to join us today. See you in the second day of the International Public Lecture tomorrow. I'm Afidah Nur Aslama, signing off. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Izin
Terima
pamit
kasih
dulu.
semuanya. Siap, Bu.